I've always been really interested in young people's engagement with digital culture. And I started off looking at how digital culture impacted social norms. And that was something that really interested me. This is kind of the beginning of digital culture. And I had 2 young children, and I was seeing the nature of childhood change. And it was a pivotal moment in childhood studies. So I decided that that would be a really, I think people should always follow their passion when they're doing their research. And I advise students this all the time. You have to have a particular passion for the research question to pursue it to the end.
What year was that?
That was around 2001, 2002 that this was happening, that kids were starting to play with console games and video games, and childhood was really shifting. And I went to a huge conference in London after I had finished my master's degree, and I presented on my thesis, which was about boys in video games. And I thought I was presenting to like an audience of 5 people, and it turned out to be this huge media event because there was so much moral panic about the changing nature of childhood. And all of the authors from my thesis were there and engaged in this heated debate, and I was this like new kind of overwhelmed young MA student who was caught up in the center of this. And then I decided to expand, it was really interesting for me because I hadn't expected it. I don't think anybody had expected that kind of blowback from that, childhood education conference. And then I came to the library for a talk about that same issue, about young people's engagement online. And I was at the Atwater Library, and it was a community conversation. And there was so much passion, and people were so heated and so, vehemently engaged in their positions that at first I was really dissuaded, and then I stopped and thought, and I said, well, there's something here that's really provoking people's concerns, and it needs to be written about, and it needs to be researched. And that's where it all began.
When you got into cyber violence, what was the transition, say, from this fairly early stage in the research into something as focused and as sensitive as that?
You know what? When I began, I never in a million years thought I'd end up where I ended up, because I really stayed away from gender and I stayed away from violence, which were 2 of the big moral panic issues. And I love I want to say the banal, but I love the everyday aspects of research. Looking at those small nuggets of human life, like that window into a person's world. And I really was not going in that direction at all. But I guess I call myself a recovering academic because I moved into community and more of an activist environment. And when I moved into those areas, I was really looking at privacy, data mining, as I said, changing social norms, the way our engagement with digital culture changes the ways in which we communicate, the ways in which we create our identities, and that type of thing. But what was really being asked of me every time I would go into the community to give a talk were those very related issues of cyber violence and gender-based sexual violence, and they all tied together. But that's what was really of interest to frontline workers, social workers, teachers, young people that I was speaking to. So I'd go to speak about one thing, digital literacy or privacy or data mining or an issue, but what people really wanted to talk about, what they really wanted to know about were these other things. And that's what I ended up responding to. I've become more of an activist. I think originally I was more of a writer and a thinker, and I think I've become more active in my my work and more bringing my work into community and trying to affect change. When I came into this work, I was, sociologists bring the question to the table, but then funders were like, yeah, but what's the solution and how are you going to implement that? And that was a shock. Like, as an academic, like, what are you going to do to solve it? It's about preventing and eliminating, not like questioning whether there is an issue. And I think as an academic, we tend to look at, is sexual violence a thing? I need 7 years and $7 million to explore whether this exists, whereas in the more policy environment or the funding environment I'm working in now, it's yes, it's a thing. Yes, it's an issue. Go figure out a solution and implement that solution. So it's really changed the way I work and what my life looks like now.